if you're going to be a leader, having a degree of self-confidence and being relatively firm in your opinions is a good thing. If you don't have a really firm belief in what you're doing is right, you can't convince others to follow you. But um, I think most people, myself included, there's always this tiny little voice in the back of your head. What if I'm wrong? What if I'm wrong? What if I'm wrong? And that little voice gets you to listen to people. And thank God, many times in my career, I've absolutely wanted something, and my guys said, Bob, look, don't do this. It's not going to work, or we can't build it. And I'd push back a lot and say, yeah, well, you guys are just negative, et cetera, et cetera. And they'd come back and say, Bob, listen, we got to tell you, one more presentation. We'll take you down to the shops and we'll show you the reasons why we can't do this. And then finally I'd say, okay, I got it. But by the way, if you run into that much hostility, it probably isn't going to work because the people at that point, if you do a force job and say, I don't care what you guys say, I hereby ordain that you do it, they're going to go into malicious obedience and you'll never get a decent product.
Right, but you'd mentioned when you get hostility like that, but I think you're really just talking about resistance. And it's not necessarily hostile yet, but I'm always a big fan and student of leadership, not management, leadership. And the story you just told was actually a little bit surprising to me, because you got a big persona, you got a big personality, you got a big reputation. And what you just said tells me that you created an environment that made it safe for people to give you some resistance.
That was another thing I learned in the Marine Corps. And it's in Marine Corps leadership style principles. And that is that you adapt your leadership style to the situation at hand. And when time permits, you listen to your subordinates. That means for a second lieutenant, he listens to the sergeants and corporals who have probably been in the infantry a hell of a lot longer than a freshly minted second lieutenant. When you're a colonel, you listen to lieutenants and sergeant majors. And if you go to a Marine Corps weapons demonstration, the presentations are not like in the movies where there's a 2-star general standing with the maps and with the pointer. In the Marine Corps, it's sergeants and sergeants major who give the presentation. So the Marine Corps strongly believes in listening to the troops. The only time you adopt a more draconian and more absolutist leadership style is in an emergency situation where there is either no time for discussion or the situation is so dire that the troops are reluctant to take the measures that you're going to ask them to take. And then you have to say, look, we're in a tough situation. We can't argue this. We need everybody to cut their budgets by 20%. I know it's awful. I know you're going to have to get rid of people. I know we're going to have to delay programs, but that's the situation we're in. And I never said, what I always avoided was when they said, well, why do we have to do this? I never said, because I say so. That's the sign of a weak leader. A good leader is capable of explaining the necessity to the people that are being asked to accomplish the task. And I always used, to the extent possible, I always used humor. But one GM story, when I got to GM, in 2001, on my return at age 70, I was at a first meeting of all my direct reports, and there were about 20 people in the room. And I started, just banter. And telling them what I thought was wrong with GM products, and I saw everybody hunched over pieces of paper, scribbling furiously. And I said, what are all you people doing? I said, well, you're a vice chairman and you're addressing us and you're giving us wisdom from your career and we're taking notes. And I said, guys, listen, you don't know me very well, but I tend to run off at the mouth. I'm what is technically known as given to verbosity. And I say a lot of things that don't make any sense. And what I do is I try to trigger responses in people. And I say a lot of controversial things, and I want to hear pushback. And you people should never be worried about pushing back. The only thing there's just one rule. Any one of you at any time in any meeting can say, excuse me, sir, you're full of shit. I would just ask you to say, and this got a big laugh, I'd say you have to preface it with the words, with all due respect, sir, you are full of, and everybody laughed. And you know what? 2 or 3 weeks later, I think we were having an argument about fake wood versus real wood in cars, and can the consumer tell the difference? Because the cost difference is like 10-1. And I was and fake wood today looks better than real wood in most applications. And that's when one guy finally said, okay, I'm going to test this. He says, with all due respect, sir, you are, and everybody looked horrified to see how I was going to respond. I said, thank you, sir, for breaking the ice. I've been waiting patiently for somebody to do that. Now tell me why. And once everybody understood that nobody was going to be punished, we had meetings that sounded like verbal free-for-alls. We'd shout and I mean, we'd insult each other, and I accepted as well as I got. But you know what? I never feared for my authority because I knew at the end of the day, they knew I had the stripes. They knew who was in charge, and they knew that if I put my foot down, I was going to get my way. So I never saw it as threatening my authority or threatening my position or hurting my ego if people criticized my ideas or my opinions.
This has been Jeff Stearns, Connected Through Cars.